All right, so I'm going to share a little bit about KRC first for those of you who may not be as familiar with our organization, as well as a little bit about the background of our town halls and why we're here tonight. So first, a little bit about KRC. So Kansas Rural Center for the past over 40 years now has promoted the work on long-term health of land and its people through research, education, and advocacy. And we do this several ways. We monitor state and federal level food and farm policy. Many of you possibly receive our Policy Watch and e-publication during the legislative session. We're also members of a national organization called the Sustainable Agriculture Coalition. So we're able to work directly with folks on the ground in DC on specific food and farm policy throughout the year. We also provide the practical hands-on information and resources. For example, last June, we hosted some risk management for specialty crop growers webinars. And in the coming months, we'll actually be producing some training for producers who are interested in working with schools through our Farm to School program. So through all of this, we are, of course, committed to an economically viable, environmentally sound, and socially responsible agriculture and rural culture. So why are we here tonight? The purpose of the town halls. As I mentioned, we have been doing these town halls now for the past 7 or so years, with really the greater purpose of providing a platform to share information, learn from each other about the farm and food efforts within our regions of Kansas, start community conversations and make connections, but also to share visions and take action on what we want to see for our future. So in 2014, we produced a report as a result of some of those community conversations that took place. That report is called Feeding Kansas. I'm sure some of you or many of you are familiar with that report or have read it. But in that report, we outlined specific recommendations Kansans identified as priorities to help increase our ability to better incorporate Kansas grown food into the food supply chain here in Kansas. Fast forward to last year, in 2019, we published another report and really detailed recommendations on 4 issue areas for a more resilient future, including local and regional food and agriculture, rural revitalization, conservation and environment, and renewable energy. Both of those reports are online on our website. You can download those for free. We'll put those in the chat box for you as well, so you have the direct links to those. So for this year, you know, we're taking things virtually instead of in person regionally. And so we're taking that opportunity to revisit those 4 issue areas that we outlined in our 2019 report and learn more about the implications of our future, both rural and urban, within the context of our world now, including COVID-19, Black Lives Matter, the election. So we have a lot of things that we're dealing with in the world right now, and it's safe to say that our priorities are not the same as they were last year, and they're continually shifting. So with that, I also invite you or welcome you to attend our other town halls. This is the first of 4 that we're hosting. We're also hosting one September 10th on rural revitalization, September 24th on climate and energy, and the last town hall, October 8th, will feature Farm to School. Now, as I mentioned, KRC has a new Farm to School project. We were recently awarded a grant to provide some training and resources for producers, and so this town hall will help us kick that off and share some information about what's happening across Kansas in Farm to School. And this information can also be found on our website, and we'll drop the link in the chat for that as well. Now, every town hall this year has a pre-town hall virtual farm tour, which is kind of exciting. You should have all received a YouTube link to view the first farm tour by Grazing Plains Farm and Creamery near Newton, Kansas. We will not be viewing this on tonight's call for the sake of time. However, feel free to do that on your own time. It's a really fun video. So for the next town hall, look for a video by our very own Joanna's Prairie Turnip Farm. And then a future town hall will also be featuring KC Food Hub. So look for those as well. So for tonight's town hall, this is kind of our agenda and lineup for the night. We're going to hear from the League of Women Voters on some of the 2020 election updates and reminders and information, good things to know. It probably goes without saying that being civically engaged right now, and especially voting in the upcoming election, is one small thing that we can do to all really take action on the future of our farm and food vision. So we want to be sure that you all have the tools and information that you need to make a plan to vote early this year. We'll also have our farmer-led panel this evening, and we'll be doing those introductions here in a little bit. And then finally, at the end of the panel, we'll have some time for Q&A. You can ask questions or respond to the panel, and we'll have an open discussion. I think we might try to break out into some breakout rooms. That way you have an opportunity to meet some of the other folks online tonight as well. So since we will be having that kind of open discussion and dialogue tonight, these are just a few questions to kind of keep in your back pocket or be thinking about as you're listening to the panel tonight. We definitely want you to feel free to share your story, share your questions. And so think about these questions. What concerns or positive stories do you bring tonight? What is your vision for a more resilient future? What support do you need or does your community need? And how are you going to take action after tonight? And finally, just a reminder on how to stay connected with KRC. Obviously, you can find us on our website, but also you can find us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. So whatever social platform you follow, be sure that you're also following KRC and engaging with us on those platforms as well. So with that, I think I am going to go ahead and hand things over to Ryan to help introduce us to our speakers for tonight.
Yeah, thank you, Natalie. First, before we get to the panel, we're going to have a little bit of an intro to the election and how to vote, and making sure that everyone knows about the deadlines coming up, registering to vote and things like that, from Seal King from the League of Women Voters. So Seal, take it away. You're still muted, sorry.
Thank you, Ryan. We really enjoy being here. We've done this for a few years now, and it's always a pleasure to talk to you folks. As we get started, yesterday was the certification, Centennial is certification of the 19th Amendment. And the flag I have behind me is the suffrage flag that was used as they were getting the 19th Amendment certified. So it's the suffrage colors of gold, white, and purple. And there are 36 stars on the flag representing the 36 states that had to agree to the 19th Amendment. And if you have purchased any of the new postage stamps for the centennial of the 19th Amendment, you'll see this flag on those stamps. So anyway, just a quick reminder of our time in history, because it was the suffragists that developed the League of Women Voters to continue the education on voting procedures and voting issues, or issues that we'll be voting about. And so we also celebrate our 100th anniversary this year. I'd be happy to hear any of your questions. if you've had problems with voting this last year in the primary. But just briefly, the Secretary of State has taken it upon himself to help with some of the COVID issues. And so every county received plexiglass pieces that would separate the poll workers from the voters, and a number of other items, the cleaning supplies, the individual use pens, the gloves, and on and on. So, and just recently he said that he would provide 2 drop boxes for every county that wanted them for ballots. So as we are concerned about the post office not delivering ballots, that is an option that counties can take advantage of. So if you have a county that doesn't have a drop box, or might need some more of them, you could talk to your county clerk or county election commissioner if you're in one of the largest 4 counties or largest populated 4 counties, and ask them to actually take advantage of those, because it is a more direct way to get mailed ballots. You probably know there's 3 ways to vote. You can vote at the polls on election day. Polls are usually open 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Johnson County has a 6 a.m. start. You can vote early, and Kansas law says that you can start, the counties can start providing early in-person voting as early as Wednesday, October 14th. Not all counties will do that. Some counties wait until their last day that they have to provide. They have to provide early voting at least a week before the election. So again, you can check with your county, and if they aren't providing very many days of early in-person voting, or if they're not providing a Saturday or an evening hours, again, talk to your county clerk and see if they can't expand that, because we see a direct relation between the hours that a county provides early voting and the number of voters that actually vote in that county. If you want to get a mailed ballot, you have to fill out an application for a mailed ballot. You have to fill one out for every election in Kansas, unless you are permanently handicapped or have a permanent illness. And then you can get a permanent advanced ballot where you will receive that ballot for every election. There is, and if you go to vote early, then that's your 3 ways: election day, early in-person voting, or asking for a mailed ballot. I'm a poll worker, and so I was a little surprised at my polls in the primary. A number of people that came in said, well, I asked for a mailed ballot, but I decided I would come vote. And if you don't understand the problem with that, let me tell you, because once you've asked for a mailed ballot, there is the advanced written by your name in the poll book. And so if you come in to vote at the poll place, we see that you have already asked for a ballot. You will be given a provisional ballot. And there's nothing wrong with the provisional ballot, except that it's more work for the county clerk, because they all have to be hand processed. Your regular ballot goes into an envelope, and on the outside of that envelope is essentially a voter registration. So the county clerk has to look at that voter registration, see if you did in fact ask for a mailed ballot, go through the whole process of looking at all the poll workers' reports and see if you actually voted in person. And if you did, then that mailed ballot is not counted. If they find that you didn't vote in person, then that provisional ballot is counted. It's counted after the canvass for the county at the very last. If you vote by mail ballot or in person early, your ballots are the first ones to be counted. They are counted before the tallies for all the poll workers come in. So just a reminder, because we had 30 provisional ballots in my polling place, and almost all of them were because people had asked for a mail ballot. A couple of them said they didn't get it. A few of them said, well, they got it, they lost it. A couple of them lost the envelope. A couple of them made a mistake on the ballot, and so that's a valid reason to come in and get a new one. If you want information on the candidates, you can go to vote411.org. It's a national site funded by the League of Women Voters. We've asked all the candidates statewide questions, and they respond. And when they do those pieces of information, their responses go directly into Vote 411. We don't edit them at all. It's however they respond. And if you find that your candidate has not responded to those questions, you might bug them and say, we really want to know your positions on these different questions. And hopefully they will respond better. Just remember, this election's a big one. In addition to our president, and there'll be, I believe, 4 candidates for president on the Kansas ballot. Of course, the Democrat, the Republican, a Libertarian, and I believe an independent. And also we have the U.S. Senate race. We have all 4 of our U.S. congressional district races. We have all 125 of our Kansas representatives, all 40 of our Kansas senators, 4 of our excuse me, or 5 of our Board of Education races. You have your county races. You have some judges on there. So all the issues that we're talking about tonight are all going to be decided by all those people on that ballot. It's really important. If you want to know, if you've put in a mail ballot and want to be able to track it, you can go to the Kansas Secretary of State website, myvoteinfo.voteks.org, and you can see that your application for a mail ballot has been received. You can see when it's sent out, and you can see if the county has received it back after you filled it out. So it's a really good way to know, be able to track your mail ballot and feel secure about that. If for some reason you messed up somehow, you didn't sign the envelope, your county clerk is supposed to notify you and give you a chance to come in and sign it, because the ballot doesn't count if you don't sign your envelope for a mailed ballot. And I'm sure there's lots of more information. If you need to update your voter registration or register or get a mailed ballot application, you can go to ksvotes.org, and you can do all those things on your phone or your iPad or a computer with a mouse. Do you have any questions? The deadline to get a mailed ballot, they put that in the chat box there, is a week before the election. Let's see, is that October 27th? Anyway, it's a week before the election. I wouldn't wait that long to ask for a mailed ballot. Thank you all.
Yeah, thank you so much, Seal. We appreciate the good knowledge and info you have on voting. And also a reminder that the deadline to register to vote in this election is October 13th.
Right.
So keep that in mind. Thank you very much. All right, so we are running a little bit behind, but I'm going to introduce our panel, and you can hear less of me talking and more of them and their wisdom. So we have Gabe Spurgeon from South Baldwin Farms and the president of the Kansas Specialty Crop Growers Association. He's going to be moderating the panel for us this evening. Of the panelists, we have Donn Teske, farmer and president of the Kansas Farmers Union. He's up in Wheaton. Donna Pearson McClish. She runs Common Ground Producers and Growers in Wichita. Mark Gawron, He works for Cultivate KC in Kansas City. And we have Chris Sramek at High Plains Food Co-op in Rawlins County. So sorry if I mispronounced any of your names, but love to hear what you have to say, and thanks so much for being here tonight. Take it away, Gabe.
Hey, so just wanted to thank Lucille. While she was talking, I took advantage and went to the website that she had mentioned, Voter 411, and verified my status as a registered voter because I moved since last time I voted. Couldn't remember if I fixed that or not. So thanks for the good information. Now I know I'm good to go. So everybody, just want to remind of exactly what the topic is. So tonight we're looking at the future of farming and food, specifically local and regional food system resilience. Our food system resilience was tested, especially logistically, the last 6 months. And I think maybe we saw some weaknesses we could improve. And exactly where we are locally and regionally on, specifically, I'm obviously more involved in specialty crops. So seeing the fruits and vegetables uptick in sales. So I want to ask our panelists a few questions that we've got prepared, and I think they've been shown ahead of time as well. So the first thing I want to ask each of you to discuss one at a time, and we'll just start with Donna because she's the first one that shows up in my tile view. Where are you at, and what's important to you in the present and the future? And Donna, you've got a big future coming up with the grant that you just received. So that I think that's a good springboard for you on where you're at and where you're going with food system resilience.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for inviting me. I'm glad to be here. Just a little bit of information. We recently received one of the first UAIP, Urban Agricultural Implementation Project grants. And there were 7 awarded across the United States, and we were one of the awardees. And we are very humbled by the award. There's lots of work, but one of the issues that we identified in the grant was that the food system itself has illuminated the existing problems of health care, and getting fresh food to people, especially our vulnerable populations. So one of our goals at Common Ground is to work with the seniors in low-income and food desert areas in order to provide fresh produce for those that normally don't have access to it. Someone was talking to me about how do we make food accessible? And I tell them that the farmer has to make a comparable wage, and our customer has to be able to afford the food. So we've got to make a way for those things to happen. I think our people are seeing that food is a very important part of their life, of their health. And I think they're experiencing quite a bit of anxiety because there's not a lot of good, healthy food available. The grocery stores are having issues restocking. Someone called and sent a message the other day that they pulled onions off the shelf because they had to recall them, and different little things like this, which was a big thing. But more and more our farmers are called to step in. Our local farmers are called to step in to fill the gap in this food system that has collapsed. And so we have to look at, again, providing equitable wages to farmers, because I tell people all the time, you have no idea what it takes to get this food to your table and how much work someone has to put into that. So we've got to provide that, and if our end customer has to be able to afford the product. I think it's more important now than ever that we adapt our food systems to the future, not to the present, that we look at where we're going and what may lie ahead in the future, and we begin to adapt our food systems to that, because I don't think we will ever go back to where we were. We're in a phase of history. And so we're going to have to adapt our food systems to the future of what it's going to look like.
Thank you, Donna. Donn, would you like to comment? Where are you at, and what do you find that's important now in your present and go forward?
Yeah, make me follow Donna. Oh man. In my own personal operation, I've been focusing mostly on the last couple of years on the beef cow-calf operation. We have a lot of native prairie on our farm, and we've focused on that and not so much on the cropping. Done a lot of things over the years. Kathy and I dairied for 20 years. We were organically certified for a number of years when we were cropping and that kind of thing. So I've kind of fallen into this niche. It works well around my job off the farm. COVID has really showed not only the vulnerability of the food system when it comes to livestock, but also the industrial opportunity to abuse the situation. And what I mean by that was JBS was making over $2,000 profit per head. At the same time, the government is sending a stimulus subsidy check to a livestock producer to keep him out there. You can see how wrong the system is, that they're receiving record profits and it's not trickling down to the producer. And so in that light, that's opportunities for people that want to do direct sales with beef, and that's been a real boon for them. Of course, the weak spot in that right now is the local locker plants and the waiting list. I had a beef butchered in late July in Frankfurt, and I had gotten on the waiting list in February. So I just told her when I dumped the beef off that put me on the list for the next time you have an opening. So the next time I get a beef butchered there is going to be September 7th, 2021. And so there's opportunity there for a young person with a strong back. But I don't know if that's the direction this discussion was intended to go, but I've just had a tremendous amount of frustration with the corruption in the industrial system and how the line workers have been treated through this, and then how fragile that is. And so, in Kansas, our COVID hotspots radiate out from those areas where they're being forced to work and become contaminated. So,
yeah,
that's my spiel.
Yeah, that's tough with all the consolidation of the meat packing when the problem at one plant. I mean, it's a big part of our Kansas economy, but when there's a problem at the one plant, it's tough for the little guys to absorb it, but thank God they're there, right? All right.
Opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one big thing I've seen with every industry is going direct to consumer, like you said, selling by the cut. If you're positioned well, this was a good time for that. Let's go on to Mark with Cultivate Kansas City. Mark, where are you at right now, and what's important to you in this unprecedented present and going forward?
Hi, thank you. I guess where I'm at is, a little background of my work is, while I do farm, a lot of my work is done with other farmers, and mostly in the urban environment and some peri-urban as well. So tend to be producers on a smaller scale, but in more specialty crop rather than any sort of large farms. And at least from this pandemic-wise, seeing those producers that were able to quickly adapt in technology, getting online sales, beefing up their direct-to-market footprint and their online footprint, were able to sort of adapt the quickest and and keep their sales up going in as some of these, because at least in the city, we see, restaurants sales completely fall off the map. So if that's what's the main market, which often can be pretty heavily in the urban farmer because you're close, it's high value and such that. So we definitely saw a lot of that. So Cultivate works with a lot of newly resettled refugee farmers, which don't necessarily have the tech savvy to quickly adapt to that, though there's assistance through some of our programs as well. But beyond that, I think beyond just there was great opportunity, I would say, because quickly saw demand grow for local food.
Yeah.
So if you could quickly, increase your production, adapt your market, then you could have good success going in this year. However, what I would like hopefully see in the future is that opportunity maintains itself then. And, if we get past this pandemic, that we do learn the lessons that having, whatever the percentage now is, up 40, 50, if somebody, the percentage of food that's coming out of California that isn't sustainable for the nation to respond to a crisis, much less just long-term, that they are farming there past what their scale can sustain long-term. So I think I would like to see us to take these lessons to build a more resilient system that has an increased number of producers producing at larger scale, and be more prepared for maybe the next round of, whether it be pandemic, more climate crisis coming down, which is we're distracted by the pandemic, but the climate crisis definitely looming. What else?
Something that you touched on, Mark, that I thought was interesting, that I've seen a lot, is the quick transition to online sales. I know some people that have, on-farm stores that have even kind of repurposed storefront more for online sales and pickup. So they're not really having a storefront so much as your sack's ready at the storefront.
Yes.
You guys Cultivate Kansas City. And honestly, pandemic aside, I see that doing well going forward. I know my wife, we've got 3 kids. She would much rather be able to do her shopping in between, rallying kids, and just pick it up, as opposed to walk through a store or be in a store where the kids are going to knock something over. So I see that sustaining, in my opinion.
I believe so. And I think a lot of farmers are liking that as well, from at least talking to them, what I hear, being more direct communication, knowing exactly what they need to, what's pre-sold, not just harvesting whatever amount and having to go to the farmer's market and wondering exactly how it all sales out. With a lot of farm market sales way down, especially, they might be picking up a little bit now, but definitely for a stretch they're being down. Also, it's encouraging to see, and I'll give two sides, but definitely saw some very encouraging things in the city where we see necessarily, and for an example, an organization that popped up called the Chef Collective, who was a group of chefs suddenly taking product in and preparing meals for low food access individuals. And we see, the food banks start to struggle to fulfill all their needs with supply chains shortage. And I would not even, from a producer standpoint, not even necessarily in the amount of food or production or thing, but seeing increased prices in materials, whether it's packing materials, whether it's supply, irrigation equipment, shade cloth, prices went up on everything. So the cost of production went up, but have our price points really changed at all for what we can sell product at? No, it still remains somewhat stagnant. We see some climb, but so that's a concern going forward, because we are, with inflation and just cost, and much less and I'll stop talking, sorry, but the lag in production. Like we had to put an order in for supplies, and where we may expect it in 2-3 weeks, it's like, oh, 8 weeks I might get it to you. You know, so the planning process to go into the season has to adapt and change.
Yeah, we just had a comment from Rebecca that she kind of echoed that she has more effort that goes into weekly ordering, but less waste, and that's a big problem in our whole food system. We talk about food accessibility, but we're wasting 30-40% of our food. We're running short on time, so I'm going to run to Chris here and ask you the question, what's important to you now? Where are you at? And what do you think is important going forward, Chris? Also, give us a small introduction to who you are and what the High Plains Food Co-op.
High Plains Food Co-op is now a farmer direct, technically food hub, small processing center. We've, because of the COVID-19 thing, it was kind of in the right place at the right time, some of the work we were doing. We started in 2008 working with the Rocky Mountain Farmers Union, the Kansas Farmers Union, off of a software concept that the Oklahoma Food Co-op was using in Oklahoma to bring farmers in from across the state and sell direct in the cities, rural farmers to the city, rural to urban type model. We were asked to develop through the affiliation with the Farmers Union that could that be replicated to the Denver market? And we, started with about 12 farms, mostly located in rural Northeast Colorado, Northwest Kansas, Southwest Nebraska. Rawlins County is kind of the center location. To give you some perspective, we're on 36, 400 miles from Denver. 400 from Kansas City, 200 to Denver. We learned early on, because of the issue Donn was talking about, that our producer network really for Denver had to be about 400 miles in radius due to lack of USDA processing plants and the fact that all of our farms in the tri-state area have to cross state lines. So immediately that was an obstacle. We knew that we're going to be challenged with aggregation and distribution from the farm product, and the fact that out here on the plains, everything is almost completely commodity driven, and specialty crop and small farmers are about 50, 60 miles in between each other. So we had to really work hard on that. COVID, we were, over the years, we saw the direct model grow 40-30% a year all the way to 2017. Then we diversified and farmers wanted to go more into the wholesale direct restaurant markets, the grocers, the small grocers. So we changed our software to the local food marketplace, which has a ability to run two markets at the same time. We could have a wholesale market and a direct. We saw, as we moved to that, we got kind of pushed out of the marketplace, both on direct and wholesale, by the door-to-door companies. We started seeing sales decline in 18. We topped out, about 400, 500,000 in annual sales, and just started declining. 2019, we shifted a partnership with a startup company in Denver that was Hispanically owned door-to-door delivery company to do a pilot, taking our product that wasn't going to the wholesale distributors and distributing that to our member customers in Denver door-to-door. When we come into 2020, we were going to shift our whole model to that. We started doing every 2-week pilot. In February, we knew what was going on in China, got a little concerned, and on the day of the national emergency was our delivery day, and we had about, I think it was 70 orders going out, and we immediately had to switch to the door-to-door system. Right place, right time. We had a USDA auditor and inspector in there because we were working on a group gap project with our Kansas specialty crop project that had us tied to co-ops in Utah, Arizona, New Mexico, and Colorado, where we were able to bring that scale into what we were doing. And since then, we've our farms extend, we call it the Highway 36 spine. Every Monday, we drive to Smith Center, Kansas to bring on our meat supply and produce from specialty crop growers. Come to Atwood. We had a 8,500 square foot building become available in July. So we aggregate all the orders to Denver there, work with a grower that has a microgreen facility in Denver. We bring in the Colorado and Nebraska product, put it in the bundles, hand off to the door-to-door delivery company, and turn around. Right place, right time. All of our farms were able to lost their grocery markets to Kansas City, Wichita, wherever. Restaurants, when it shut down, we were able to flip it into the door-to-door. And we're hoping now that we were able to stabilize all of our core farmers. Some of the ones that are not on the Highway 36 spine have to have a little bit of extra expense coming, but we're making it work. We're resilient because we're all working together. What we've done in this new model is we've got kind of loyal customers in Denver that want to see a change in their food system. So they have subscribed. We pretty much sold the subscriptions out for what we could produce through the end of the season. We believe that we've told all of our farmers, put your exact costs into this, and we're going to mark it up because we got loyal customers at the end that we believe that when the restaurants come back and the market comes back, we got the same concern. It was just said there that, will we be able to maintain this? We believe so. And we're hoping to connect more farms locally back in Kansas to our rural markets. Everybody across the board is saying their local market and this market that we're experiencing has increased 2 to 3-fold. The challenge has been software, logistics, aggregation, and delivery.
Yeah, it seems the consumer really appreciates it whenever they feel like they're giving the farmer their dollar. They feel like it a lot more. And honestly, it's very true as someone who wholesales, delivers to wholesale markets and retail. Yeah, I'd much rather retail every piece of fruit that I can. And also, one thing that I was thinking the whole time you were talking is fortune favors the prepared. So you say right place, right time. You guys were going that direction, and it wasn't just luck, but you guys were prepared to make that pivot. That's great. So again, we're short on time. I want to revisit each panelist twice more if we can. So we're going to keep it pretty short. I'm going to ask you all 3 questions, and I want you to pick one to answer. So, or one to emphasize at least. In 10 years, what does farm resilience look like? So that's one. Do you have ideas on how we get towards the future? So I guess that's kind of a compound question. And then 3, how are multi-generations going to survive? We've got a lot of farms in Kansas that have been corn, wheat, beans, cattle. How do they survive? How do the dairies survive? Do we pivot? Do we keep doing what we've been doing? What's Chris, while I've got you still sitting on my screen, what's your thought? Pick one of those and answer it in about 90 seconds.
Okay, I'm kind of going to broad brush and try to hit all 3 of them with one topic. We've got to tie health, soil health, public health, and this captured marketplace all in one bundle. We've got to, change the system. I think as far as the multi-generational farm goes, and tie in those 3 things together, we've got political differences that put us in tribes that may be on different boundaries within the producer and the marketplace and that, but health, soil, and food cross all of that. And if you focus on that, get all that noise out of the system, it will be successful. I think the pivot for the farmer, particularly the multi-generational small farmer that hasn't put all their eggs into the commodity basket and the equipment and the transition, regenerative farming and lobbying for renewable incentives, not to just go to wind and solar, but go to regenerative farming practices.
Thank you. Mark, do you need me to reiterate the questions, or are you ready?
Oh, I can pop in, quickly cover something in there. Echo a lot of what Chris says on at least resilience in 10 years. I think and there's some good resources on adaptation in agriculture out of the USDA, the Climate Hub sites, if you're not familiar with those, to look them up. But the most major threats to the U.S. food supply being the loss of soil in the Midwest and then the impending lower snowpack and rainfall throughout on the West Coast that potentially will devastate those markets. So we have to become more resilient locally with our food production. And so definitely a regenerative approach in our soil building rather than a sustainable approach. We're going to have, so a lot of what that can look like, mass cover cropping, keep the soil covered. And I think multi-generational, there's a built-in advantage there with like staying on a farm and being able to pass it down for sure, rather than being a beginning farmer. I think there's a big draw of of our society on the kids, like of a kid wanting to stay on a farm and take over all the other distractions that we can build. So it's kind of, I guess, it's working through some of that, as well as the need possibly for those farms that I diversify and innovate in their crop production. All right, move on.
Thanks, Mark.
90 seconds.
Donn, where do you see us in 10 years, and what are your ideas on how to get there, or how do these multi-generational farms survive?
Well, the thing that's top on my mind constantly is keeping the family farm going. I'm fifth generation. I'm great-great-grandpa Michael homesteaded our place in 1868, and I've got 4 grown children, 2 grown boys, and they help where they can, but they all work off the farm, and I worry constantly about them taking on the debt to carry it into the next generation. So I think there are opportunities, but I don't think there's any opportunities trying to do it in the conventional routes. I think you're going to have to function outside the box. I think you're going to have to blaze some new trails. And I don't know if a guy goes as far as agritourism, but certainly some are taking advantage of that. I think 10 years down the road, you better be looking at adaptability big time. I'm getting to be pretty woolly and gray haired already, and over the decades of my farming has changed as the climate has changed. And all indications are that's going to be accelerating in a more rapid route. On top of that, you got the disappearance of the Ogallala Aquifer in Kansas, and so that's going to change the whole dynamics of cattle feeding and population areas, and I worry a lot about what our world's going to look like farming wise in 10 years. Even to the point where they're building tractors now that don't have operator platforms on them. I mean, the farmer himself is becoming an endangered species. So.
Yeah, to kind of build on what you just said, Donn, you know, I know a lot of farms that started conventional. I can think of one specifically that started first generation farmer in the 1970s doing more commodity traditional farming that's now gone towards agritourism. I've actually gone the opposite route. I started out doing specialty crops, not necessarily agritourism, but specialty crops direct to consumer. And this year I started a cow-calf operation on the side to help diversify. So in my opinion, that diversity is very important, because on a year like this year when I lost my peaches, I'm hoping here in about 3 years when my cow-calf operation is a little bit more into production, that when I lose my, maybe I butcher an extra heifer or something to try and make up for that. And similarly, if you lose one crop and you're in specialty crops, you have more opportunity to replant or focus on another area of the farm. Donna, you're up next. Where do you see us in 10 years? How do we get there? And or how do these multi-generation farms survive?
Well, I see ourselves in 10 years revisiting what we've done previously, because I think history has a way of repeating itself. And in 10 years, I see us looking back and saying, okay, we've been through this before. What do we need to do differently to get through it? I'm very optimistic. I always think we're going to come out better than we went into a situation. And I look at how the farm has evolved, and how 50 years ago, my parents bought an urban farm. And now 52 years later, my brothers and I are now farming it, but we're looking at now how do we pass the torch, and what is that going to look like? But I think this pandemic has began it has caused us to look at where we're going and how we're going to get there and what it's going to look like in the future. So I think we're making the changes now in order to support what happens in the future. Multi-generationally, I think we have to bring on children and families with the farm. Farmers and families and food go together. So if we bring our community into what we're doing, then we can pull those children that are interested in farming and let them know that there are different types of farming. Farming isn't always on a tractor in a field cutting wheat. There are different types of farming. I did a session with some high schoolers, and we took the different subject areas of farming from the K-State syllabus. And they looked at it and thought, oh, well, there's lots of ways to farm. I mean, there's technology, there's science, there's all kinds of things that you can do associated with farming that you can support a farmer. So I think we've got to look at it in a broad spectrum, that there are lots of ways to farm, but when we all put it together, the farmer has to be the nucleus, because he has to be able to do what he does best, and that's grow and supply food for our communities.
All right, so I've got one more question for everybody. I'm going to put you on the spot, and I'll answer first to give you just a little bit of time. But I really liked one of the questions that Natalie brought to us for everybody to think about whenever we do our breakout sessions. And this is what I always emphasize when I've done meetings. I've been in the corporate world for 8 years before I left that to farm. And at the end of meetings, everybody left with warm fuzzies, but nobody did anything. So what I'm going to ask you is, what do we do tomorrow, and what do we need from our communities? So we got to answer that pretty quickly because we're short on time, but I'll go ahead and answer first from my perspective. So something that I feel like I can do going forward is to engage and educate. So that's to volunteer my time with 4-H, allow people to tour my farm on things like the Call Valley Farm Tour, and events like this that we're doing right now, and trying to bring the community to these events. I believe we need, as farmers, to work together more with each other. So for instance, I've got a couple friends that produce more vegetables. I produce fruit. We sell to each other to have a more balanced farm store. So in Baldwin, you can have a balanced shopping experience at my store, and in Leavenworth at Jet Meat and Produce, you can get some of my fruit with his produce. And then lastly, what do I need from the community? Shop the local section at the grocery store. You don't even have to buy it directly from me. It supports me if you buy it at the grocery store too. So wherever is most convenient for you, you can shop local. So you can do it ordering online direct from the farmer, at their farm store, at the farmer's market, the local aisle at your grocery store. It's available to most people. I won't say all. Food deserts become difficult and mobility for some people, but there's door-to-door programs. So anyways, I would invite the community to explore how they can buy local. And in a lot of cases, you can do it year-round. So anybody on the panel that has their answer, go ahead and jump in. What do we do when we walk away from this meeting, and what do we need from the communities to have a more resilient food system?
Well, this is Donna, and I think one of the things we do when we walk away from this meeting is to begin to look at the different resources that we have available, especially farming resources around us for locally grown produce. One of the things that's happened with Common Ground is that because of the COVID pandemic and the restaurants being closed, we have more local growers that are willing to sell to Common Ground to move their produce. So I think we've got a plethora of growers around us that we can all come together, and those we do each have our part, and we do what we do. We move the food. They grow, we move the food to the end customer. So that's been working, and it's working. They're getting in the flow. We have an online store presence. We do deliveries to our senior centers in low-income areas. We do that. They call in their orders and we deliver them, which is a little different for them, but they're getting the hang of it. And then in order for us to survive and grow, I think we just need to again come together as unified. I think it's an opportunity, an excellent opportunity for farmers to come together and be unified in what we do and show the communities that we're there for the communities. The other thing I've seen is that for our communities that don't have transportation and don't have the availability to get to fresh produce, it has to be taken to them. It has to be available close to where they can access it. So that's another thing we have to do.
Yeah, I can echo some of what Donna said with unity, but because I guess the more disconnected we are, the more separated the less resilient as a whole we can be. So I think whatever work I can do to bridge gaps, whether between producer to producer, consumer to producer, rural, urban divides, the more connected all those pieces that come together is we're going to have a more resilient system. So I think that can be through town halls like this, can be in my platform of Cultivate, where we can have educational workshops, we can have open up conversations, making those connections. I think it's one thing we can do.
I'm going to step in, and I believe wholeheartedly in the cooperative models. I've been doing that for 10 years, and it's even more important now that the producers, not only in their local market, but the regional marketplace, think broader when it comes to particularly food safety. Take a look at, to promote kind of the project we're involved in and how that can expand across food sheds and connect producer groups, let's say from the Rockies to the Mississippi. And that the USDA has a group gap program that we could centralize pieces of the food safety, having auditors, our own product SKUs and product codes, software, and central quality management systems. So one producer group can specialize in one of those and connect that food safety backbone that will lower the cost for the producer memberships from region to region, but bring the scale that would be needed if we're going to eliminate the traditional middleman. We could, if we have the food safety backbone, the software in place, then we can scale product from region to region and in our local markets with our local producers.
Donn, what do you think we can do tomorrow? Not today, 'cause it's already 8 p.m. What are we going to do tomorrow? And what do we need from our communities?
Well, what we have with our communities right now is a unique situation with the COVID crisis that people have started to become more aware of where their food comes from. And this is a unique opportunity to educate the consumer further on that. And hopefully after the COVID crisis passes, the consumer base will still recognize that need for their local food, their local farmers. And so that relationship needs to be developed now while the opportunity is hot. And hopefully will continue on after the COVID crisis is after, because we could have a lot of young lions gearing up now to supply that local opportunity. And then when the COVID crisis passes and the convenience running to the corner to the grocery store happens again, you could leave them hanging high and dry. So it's going to be up to the community to not only encourage young people to get involved in direct sales to the consumer, but also to support them as they do that and can support them into the future. You know, I'm probably talking too long, but frankly, the first thing that popped in my head when you asked that question was, what do we need from each other in rural Kansas? We need to hug each other virtually somehow. Look out for your neighbors. Keep an eye on them. I am taking the stress level in rural America was sky high before the COVID outbreak, and now with all the uncertainty of that, stress levels are off the roof. And I am taking a lot of calls from individuals that just need somebody to talk to. And you know, if you see a neighbor out there that you're worried about, go say hi from 6 feet away. Ask them if they're doing okay. Ask them what you can do to help. We need each other.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's a great note to end on. So we'll hand it back to the KRC staff.